Okay, we're back. Well, nobody else is back yet. Let's give it a few minutes for people to show up. I'm hearing me.
One watching. That's me. If you two guys want to get together this week, meaning I say, meaning you one, you two. Not that the others aren't welcome, but regarding watching that 2 hour.
Oh yeah.
Town hall. That really took it up a notch, and I mean, I'm basically all in 99.5% as far as it not being fraud and will perform as promised.
I have heard of the what do they call it? Investment portfolios for well-to-dos and those in the know,
Right.
From the past.
And that's this guy's altruistic. He used the word altruistic. So that means he's.
So you'll notice that a lot of these, I use a lot of the same court citations. Good.
We have him on recording. I was referring to the exceedingly during the week rather than waiting until next weekend. You know, I would get together with anyone who wants to watch the 2 hours.
Right. Yeah.
Then that'll make the weekend a whole lot more valuable.
Well, yeah. If you want, I mean, yeah, I've got it here too. If we want to sit and watch it here.
Right. So during the week is my point, rather than.
Right. Somebody's at the door.
No, it was Scott.
Oh,
Banging on the table.
oh, okay. All right. So somebody's here. Okay, so there was 224 hits on that appealable issues. Okay, so we're going to get going then. So there's a lot of these court citations that are going to be similar because they still apply. But it's all political. It's really no separation of powers. That Luther versus Borden was 1849. And so the political department has to follow the executive department. And there's a lot of people that say that the original, the Judiciary Act is another good example. Matter of fact, it's even in that common law court case. That lawyer actually made the argument that there's no real Article 3 courts. A real Article 3 court is a common law court.
I concur. That's why everyone who thinks, I don't think any court, all the way up to the Supreme Court, is Article 3.
No, they're not.
But maybe me as a sovereign, I'll turn my court into an Article 3 court when I know who I am and I bring in my
Yeah.
signature with my seal. Maybe that's my Article 3 court, and I don't have to wait for them to give it to me. I'm bringing my own.
I think that well, maybe.
Based on
Do you
members.
have to have a jury though, 12 people?
For what purpose? I'm demanding trial by jury. And when they can't perform, they have to give me what my sovereign right said on the writ. That's the point Charlie was making, where he was heading.
There you go. Okay.
Like a lot of this argument, we're in there doing this and that. Maybe we have not gotten to the very root of the matter, and I'm going to be testing it.
Right. So we can do it's political, or we can do the Roman cult.
Well,
Do we have a preference?
tell us kind of, if you had to tell us in one or two sentences, the difference?
Well, the Roman cult is basically talking about how it's all Roman law.
Okay.
And how it's all over the place,
Okay.
and it's political, as talks about what people do is they'll challenge like the 14th Amendment, and you can't challenge the 14th Amendment because the executive branch come out and said that the 14th Amendment was ratified. So you will never ever be able to say that that's unconstitutional because the executive branch said that it's ratified.
Okay, so under the organic laws, in order of events, which would be first? It's political or it's all Roman law?
Well, either one of them is definitely relevant. I mean, again, especially when you think of appealable issues, you have to again understand the nature of what's going on, and why it's part of denials of due process of law. See what I'm saying? In their Roman cult, in their Roman law, their Vatican court, they're never going to give you due process of law.
I don't know that they can.
I don't think they
So
can.
we can't blame them.
But it's again, the burden's on you to understand what's going on and to point out their defects. You see what I'm saying? And then when you do that, then you'll win on appeal.
Well, I'm trying to get to where I don't. How do we get to where it doesn't even get to an appeal?
Well, you got to make it so they don't want to talk to you anymore. Which is what I've done in a large extent, but it's not completely, because the cop stopped Ken driving my car. You know what I mean? But he showed them. So I think they were ready for the. I don't know where he did the illegal lane change. Usually the highway patrol. That's the highway patrol. It was state police, right? And the state police don't usually mess with you unless you're, especially if you're in a city somewhere. They don't mess with you. If you're out on the highway somewhere, that's different. But and so you did an illegal lane change on the highway. If you do that, that's going to get you into an accident. So what's going to happen? And so, he did an illegal lane change. I'm not sure where or what the circumstances are. You know what I mean? So where was that? Matter of fact, I should ask Ken that. So the bottom line though is that so we can do the Roman cult or we can do it's political. They're both it's political. I mean, it's a lot of the same stuff we did yesterday. We're not going to get through the whole thing anyways. It's right now it's 1:30, 2:30. It's 2:30. So we've got 2.5 hours basically. We might get through the whole thing. That other one went a lot quicker than I thought it would. So we might get through the whole thing. Where are we going to go for dinner?
No,
It's going to be really busy because it's
not necessarily.
You don't think so?
Not
Oh.
necessarily.
Well, because of this weekend? I mean, if
I
the
said-
boardwalk is like a zoo,
No, not everyone came to the shore. It's not like a summer day.
I suppose.
It's just a lot of property owners that are down.
People that are already here that have a house here or something.
Right. Many of them may not be going out because they're saving money.
Who knows? Yeah.
That's why
Yeah.
I said it's, you know,
So, which one? We can do the Roman cult, or we can do it's political.
well, let's. I would vote then for it's political.
Okay.
Seconded.
So, all right. And then I'm going to check the live stream. Looks like we got some people back there. And they're different. They're not the other ones that were on the other one. The 14th Amendment does not exist. Yeah, but you gotta they're gonna assault you with it no matter what. And so you got to be prepared for that. I always tell them I'm not a 14th Amendment citizen, and I have right of blood because Will Livingston's my fourth great uncle, and he ratified the Constitution for New Jersey, and so that creates a problem for him. But the bottom line is that you have to be ready for it. They're going to assault you with it. They have to. That's why I'm attacking this the minor estate and the 1871 corporation, because if you attack that, then that's the foundation of all of it. That's Roman law. The 14th Amendment brings in Roman law as part of the Roman law, and so that's why I attack that's why I do that, by attacking the foundation of it, which is the 1871 corporation, bringing in Roman law. That's really where it all coming from. It's the 1871 corporation. And I attack it because of the First Amendment. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. I think that's like a home run. They can't dispute that, and so they're kind of screwed. So, anyways, so let's get going then. So it's political. This is Do-It-Yourself Kangaroo Courts 33. It's always political. Not always, but there's all of the important stuff. You know, like they said, the 16th Amendment's been ratified. There's court cases that talk about it, that the 16th Amendment has never been ratified. Matter of fact, let me see if I can pull up. I should pull up some of those. Probably need to add in some stuff here while we're talking about it. Let me see. There's right here. This one's a good one. Okay, we'll add it in when the time comes. I'm not a lawyer. Well, I meant a liar. Well, I said I'm not a liar. I meant a lawyer. No, I meant a liar. Um, you should never take my word for anything. You should always do your own research. I provided references to aid you in your research. I don't know everything, and I'm open to any ideas. There's four types of people you'll meet in your life. There's the people who try to wake up the slaves. There's the slave masters. There's the people who have no idea they're slaves. And there's the people who like being slaves. Which one are you? Do you really know for sure? Are you who you think you are? If you can see through the illusion, then you are the solution. If the people don't know their basic rights and freedoms, how can they know when or if their rights and freedoms are being infringed? Never forget the men who started this country are marijuana growing, whiskey drinking, tax evading rebels who left their beds at night to shoot at the cops. All tyranny needs to gain a foothold is for people of good conscience to remain silent. I don't trust the government. I don't trust the medical, pharmaceutical, industrial complex. I don't trust the military industrial complex. I don't trust the mainstream media. I don't trust the bankster criminal cabal that owns the government, owns the medical, pharmaceutical, industrial complex, owns the military industrial complex, owns the mainstream media. If you call me a conspiracy theorist, I don't trust you. Government's not reason, it's not eloquence. Like fire, it's a dangerous servant and a fearful master. So when a state forms a constitution, which is approved by Congress, it's stopped to deny its validity. The action of Congress cannot be inquired into, for the judicial is bound to follow the political department. And this is 1849, I think, is what it was there, eh? Which is before the Civil War. So you have to understand. So is there any real separation of powers? Certainly after the Civil War, there was no separation of powers, but there might not be even before.
Well, there's an argument made out there by a certain ex-lawyer that because of what George Washington did by taking office too early and taking the wrong oath, he created the problem of the government not being separated, because there was, I think the discussion was that there were 3 presidential offices.
That's interesting. I haven't heard that. Actually, I have heard that. I've seen it alluded to. I didn't really get my head around it. About him not taking the wrong oath.
Yeah, he took the wrong oath because he takes the Article 2 oath, but there was an Article 6 oath, I believe.
Right, as an executive officer versus the.
Yeah, but doesn't Article 2 specify his oath of office?
Yeah, well, they both do. They're a different oath.
Well, my
Because the other one says is the oath to this Constitution. The other one doesn't say that.
Article 6
That's this oath, yeah. The Article 2 oath, it doesn't.
doesn't say this Constitution. It says the Constitution.
It says the Constitution of the United States, not for the United States.
You know what I think I'm going to do?
They put him in a different political office by taking that oath.
Well,
Because he couldn't be the president for the United States
of America
because he hadn't fulfilled the 14-year residency.
See, my issue is that I think it's a bogus argument. He could not lawfully become enter the office of president. There was no office of president at the time of the oath, when the oath was taken in 1789,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So April 4th, 1789, the claim is no one could be the president of the United States, but he could be the commander-in-chief. Could we go back and start from the beginning of Article 2, just to kind of read the whole thing in context? He's the president of the United States of America. That's an office. I think your camera went off.
Mike? Oh, it did.
Whatever's happening.
I think it's doing the power thing.
Okay, so that means the card's full, probably.
I'd have to pull that.
That's a week or two long study.
Oh yeah.
I just kind of marked that it's on my list.
It's
And that's why I think, you see, I'm claiming the executive power is the man and he's the commander-in-chief, correct?
yeah. But this is why I say there are 3 separate offices for the president.
They are.
I can't quote them off the top of my head right now. This is going off the other research that was done on it. I'm sure there's people know it by heart. Fortunately, I'm not one of them.
So the power is vested in a president of the United States of America. And that's where I think we vested that by electing a man. The electors boil it down to this man is the president of the United States of America as the commander-in-chief.
I can't even. It's an article. There's an Article 6. I think it's Section 3.
Clause 3.
Yeah, Clause 3.
Yeah, all executive and judicial officers, both of the United States and of the several states, shall be bound by oath or affirmation to support this Constitution.
Yeah, and that's the one that they don't take. And he couldn't take that one because the Constitution, or the United States and the Constitution, so to speak, weren't in force or effect, or full force or effect, until he'd obtained 14 years residency.
So let's say he was. So then the second time he took the oath,
He didn't take the Article 6 oath. He continued to take the Article 2.
yeah, but
Well,
why-
that's what they're required to take.
he would have qualified the second time around by being here 14 years.
Yes, but the Article 6 oath is what gave him the power, if you like, of the full presidency under the Constitution. He just took a political office oath under Article 2.
Okay.
So he didn't have full authority as president, using the power of the Constitution. because he wasn't taking an oath to defend this Constitution. He just swore an oath to be president.
Okay, well,
And he could do that. He was allowed to do that, which is why he could take that oath.
it's a good thing I'm recording that online because I'm not going to be able to use this for now. But anyway, so I'll mess with it tonight.
Is it just running out of...
I think the files are too big, and I filled up 2 disks, and it shouldn't have. But I made the resolution too high. I need to make it smaller resolution, making the file smaller, and then should have no trouble. So that's my problem, I think.
Well,
Anyways,
it is a political question, and that's the point the man was making. That's making the argument Washington was never properly.
He was never properly sworn in as the president under the full power of the office of the presidency, because he didn't take all the necessary oaths, or he didn't take the correct oath and separately appoint a sub-president. That was
Yeah, I
discussed as
still
well.
don't buy that argument. I've heard it, and I don't understand what they're saying. But what I do understand, what some people have said, is in this Article 2, the word "the Constitution of the United States" there refers to 2 things. Is the argument. One, it refers to all the property, like I'm constituted of flesh and bones, and I'm constituted. So the United States is constituted of all the land, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the other position is that the Constitution of the United States that is referring to is the Articles of Confederation. That's what the claim is that this one person, this one woman says. That when it says the Constitution, it's referring to the Articles of Confederation. When it says this Constitution, it's referring to the one that's being ratified by the states.
so the Article 6 Constitution says that Article 6 says
This Constitution.
all executive and judicial officers, both of the United States and of the several states, shall be bound by oath or affirmation to support this Constitution.
Yeah, the one that is now being signed on this date, being
Right.
sent out to the states.
And
Whereas
so-
the Constitution, and that to me is encouraging. And the question is what does within the United States mean from a 14-year, and is
If the intent was that it was common law based, then the argument about within this state or in this state wouldn't be a factor, it wouldn't apply.
So his oath is to preserve, protect, and defend, not support. Doesn't say support.
exactly.
But preserve, protect, and defend is basically way more than support, in my opinion.
And I'm claiming that I'm going to the man in the office of the President of the United States as Commander-in-Chief of the United States of America, which is the country. That's the office of the President of the United States is responsible to me as my public servant, as Commander-in-Chief, who's the head of the armed forces. So when I need the Army to come and arrest the judge, that's what I want the U.S. Attorney to do for what they did to me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not a commercial transaction. They want it to be a commercial transaction.
Yeah.
He.
Yeah. I don't see that there's, I think that his oath, the only oath he's required to sign to take is the one in Article 2.
And the problem with that is they're claiming, forgive me, I don't know if they are or not. Isn't it true? Let's go back to the requirements of the 14 years. what's the requirement to be who? To be what? Is it, it's the man, right? Because he had to be on the land for 14 years.
Yeah,
I
resident.
claim that within the United States, are we saying that the United States was not created till July 4th? Some would claim it started with the first shot that was fired up in Concord. And if you go forward from that time, is that 14 years?
Well,
A
you could
resident-
claim as well that if he was a general military, then the military started before the country did.
Yes, that's
Right.
true.
Right. And so the question.
And George Washington, they called him the bulletproof George Washington. So he was obviously involved in the French and Indian Wars and all the shit that was going on before that.
Right. So what is when it says 14 years a resident within the United States? What is that? What's the United States there? I think it's the geographical, not the political. So the Union was created July 4th, 1776.
Yeah, but before that, it was colonies. Remember?
Yeah, but a
United States
colony's
didn't
still a
exist
state. A colony's still a state.
of another country. It was a colony of Great Britain.
That's true. That's true, but it's
So
still
it
a
couldn't
colony.
exist on its own. You couldn't call it that.
Okay, well, let me
It
ask you
would
this.
have to start from the date when they could say we were no longer
What?
part
No,
of
no,
Britain.
no. Well, I want to know when the Marines or the Army was first formed.
That was in 1775.
That was the Continental Congress.
Okay, let's talk about when the first okay, I'm just thinking.
Yeah, right. That's a good point.
Continental what was the first date that the first Continental Congress got together as the United States of
I don't
America?
know. Should we Google it?
Yes. Apparently there's still a few people interested.
So what's going on here? Something's
That's nice
going
to
on
know.
with my
So
live
is it the
stream.
small United? Because I still think the styles has relevance there too.
It does, but the Declaration of Independence then didn't form the United States of America because it's the small U.
Mm.
So it didn't create the very thing you're claiming that those people are claiming, not you. And you is indebted to the United States. Right?
Yeah. Or if you're doing English grammar, it's plural.
Some people are wanting you guys to speak louder.
Sorry, that wasn't the intention to exclude the listeners, I guess.
The mic is about 10 feet from.
Yeah, it's not close by.
We'll try our best.
I'll bring my wireless mics with me next time.
Right.
So let's go 14 years a resident from the first Continental Congress, and that could defeat
So let's go.
the
Yeah.
entire presumption that this guy's been claiming.
Mm-hmm.
Because obviously there was an issue, and they were like,
Continental Congress started when?
First Continental Congress. When was their first meeting? I think it might have been in 1774 or 1775.
Yes.
First and second Congress, 1774 to 1781. You would think that it was before that.
Well, 1774, right?
Yeah. Convened in Philadelphia in 1774 in response to escalating tensions between the colonies and the British. That's interesting.
So if we go 14 years from that, where do we get?
1788.
And when was President sworn in?
1789.
I rest my case. If one is to represent when it said a legislative body with some executive function.
Doesn't say when it convened in 1774,
Well, we can all look.
but So, I mean, that was like 1 year before the Declaration of Independence.
At least a year, more, over a year.
Yeah, but it was 18 months difference between supposedly when, well, it wasn't supposedly, it was July 1st, wasn't it? So it was July 1st, 1776 was the date that we're going from, that it should have been July 1st, 1790 was the residency day that he would be eligible. So it would have to be 18 months prior to 1776, July 1st, 1776. So it would have to be over 18 months prior to that to be in line with the 14-year residency time.
Right, which would basically be any time in 1774, and that makes sense if it had to be 18 months from July 4th. 1776, because 18 months would still be January 4th, 1775, correct?
Yeah.
If you go 18 months before July 4th, 1776, we get to July 4th, January 4th, 1775. Therefore,
Anything in 1774 is over the.
it's right. And so they were like, okay, anybody that was involved at the first Continental Congress, when we gathered, that would be 14 years a resident within the United States. And they were referring to the United States at the time within, not the one with the small U that was the States of America uniting.
Yeah. Okay.
So I really think that Washington is legitimate. That man's whole entire premise is based on it. He thinks it's a fraud. And I can't, if it's a fraud, then none of our arguments as sovereign citizens mean a thing. And that's what they're saying. The King of England wanted this whole fraud thing to go down. And I think the men back then, when they were shedding their blood and risking their lives, fortunes, sacred honor, I don't think they were that crooked.
The first Congress only met for 6 weeks.
Okay.
Doesn't say when, though.
Well, I think we can find it because they're not, we can find the dates.
And then the Second Continental Congress, and all they did is the Second Continental Congress convened in 1775.
And a lot of people, it was like the weather was bad. They had to get their crops in. They had slaves to
Right,
beat
right.
or whatever. You know?
Yeah.
Not that they would be doing that.
No.
That was
The Second Continental Congress, they established the Continental Army, elected George Washington commander of the new army.
September 5th, 1774 to October, it concluded 26th in Carpenter's Hall in Philadelphia.
September, eh?
It went from September 5th to October 26th.
Wow.
So when was the Continental Army formed? Because George Washington was a general.
Right.
So he
That was in the Second Continental Congress. This is according to Wikipedia.
Yeah.
The Continental Army was June 14, 1775, which is why Trump coming up June 14th, it's his birthday supposedly, and he's going to have a bunch of tanks running down Pennsylvania Avenue.
Really? Really?
That's the word.
That's like stuff the Russians do.
And people are against it, but I'm not against it because I want them to come to my rescue.
That's interesting. That's the first time I've ever heard of that.
Yeah, well, okay.
So that would still be too early then.
The reason why we didn't need an army is there wasn't a major battle until April 19th, 1775.
So that was the first battle?
According to this, the first major battle was the battles of Lexington and Concord. April 19. So once that happened, they all got together and said, okay, it's on,
Right.
which was June 14th of 1775. The Continental Army was established before the Declaration of Independence. The
And
Declaration-
weren't the Marines the first
I've heard that.
army?
Don't know. So keep in mind, June 14th, 1775. Let's find out when Marines. And then we also need to do the post office. November 10th, 1775. Post office founding. July 26th, 1775, the first Continental Congress appointed Ben Franklin as the first Postmaster General. So that was during the first Continental Congress. After the Lexington and Concord, they decided, okay, we're on our way. We're at war. We need an army and we need a postmaster, a master of the post,
Right.
to send military orders to posts.
Well, we're talking about we first started out talking about the Constitution and the oath of office for the president. And the question became, it said he had to be here for 14 years. And so we're talking about when was talked about when the Continental Congress was first formed. And then there was a first Continental Congress and a second Continental Congress. So there's not enough data going through to YouTube. Anyways, so just for the people on YouTube, just for your information, that's what we're talking about. So, so back to the issue at hand about what's political. There have been resolutions by state legislatures saying that some amendments have not been properly ratified, the 14th Amendment, the 13th Amendment, the 16th Amendment, and then about money. Okay, there's stuff about money and the Brunson case. And there's, first of all, when it's saying it's political, they're saying there's really no separation of powers, that the judicial department's required to do it, the executive department requires. And this is actually a court case, State versus Phillips. The dissenting opinion asserts that the 14th Amendment is a part of the Constitution of the United States. While that same assertion is made by the United States Supreme Court, that court has never held that the amendment was legally adopted. I cannot believe that any court in full possession of its faculties could honestly hold that the amendment was properly approved and adopted. But it goes back down to the political issue. The executive branch says it's adopted, then it's adopted. So they lie,
Well,
And was it Congress that said it was adopted, or was it the executive branch?
It's the executive branch.
Okay.
It would have been, I don't know who like for the 16th Amendment,
That was Wilson, wasn't it?
Huh?
Wilson.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, but there's usually some government official would come down and say it appears that the amendment's been adopted. That's all they say is it appears. You see what I'm saying? Which brings color of law in by definition. But that's what they say is it appears. You know what I mean? Which means it's color of law.
It suddenly appeared.
Yeah, that's right. So The clerks at the Supreme Court heard Roberts screaming at the top of the lungs, "We cannot accept this case." Some people think they were talking about the Brunson case. That was in 107's, one of 107's videos, how the clerks heard Roberts screaming at the top of his lungs, "We cannot accept this case." I think it was the Brunson case. The Supreme
refused
Court.
it 3 times, haven't they?
Sorry?
They've refused it 3 times.
Right.
That I know of.
Right. Yeah, they have. Well, they've not really refused it. And it was under the Biden administration when all that shit went down. So now with Trump there, who knows? But I've heard that it's still there. It's still there, waiting to be heard. But and they haven't turned it away. What they do is they have a meeting, a conclave. They call it a conclave, which suggests the Vatican. But they have a meeting and decide, which cases they're going to hear, and what the next step is. So beyond that, I'm not sure. But if you talk to the Brunsons, it's still there. It's still open for possible review. Now, I'm thinking myself that if my case gets to the Supreme Court, I'm bringing up the issue of the 1871 corporation being unconstitutional under the First Amendment. And if it gets there, my case would be a natural one that they want to hear. You know what I mean? Because it's a violation of the First Amendment. It's clearly a violation of the First Amendment. And so we'll see. I sent Trump a copy of my brief in support of the notice of constitutional question. And so, but he's not going to respond. But, at least he's getting a heads up about it. You know what I mean?
It depends if he's got gatekeepers. He may not even see it either.
You're right. He probably does have gatekeepers. And you're right. He might not even see it. Some lawyer will get it. And they'll maybe mention to Trump that that this is in the works. You know what I mean? Maybe. Who knows what they'll do? But so the point is, though, is it's political, and it's all about politics, and they have to. Some things, I know that there's lots of cases that the Supreme Court will not talk about because it's political. It's like there's a guy that I actually uploaded a video. I took his sound file. It was a conference call, and this guy was here in Texas, and I took his sound file and uploaded it. I made a video out of it and uploaded it to YouTube, and it was where he has 3 different versions of a plea that he makes with the court. It's all based on political. And he'll say, it really comes down to, it's a political issue. He'll tell them it's a political issue. And they'll say, really? What's the political issue about? And he'll say, because of what's money. And he'll say that under the you're wanting Federal Reserve notes under Title 31 of U.S. Code. It's Federal Reserve notes, but under the Constitution, under Article 1, Section 10, it can only be gold or silver coin. And so it's a political issue. And so I think you guys ought to just dismiss this matter. and it gets dismissed, But he's got 3 different levels that he goes. So the first time, sometimes the first level's not enough. He has to bring up more issues and strengthen his argument. And so then he goes to Plan B, and then the Plan C. But by the time he gets to Plan C, it's pretty well a done deal. And it's a political issue, and he gets it. They drop it. What's money? That's only one issue. There's all sorts of issues right now that the government's doing that are unconstitutional, you know. And so you just bring up it's a political issue. And the courts don't like to get mixed up in politics, you know. And they don't. You know, the Supreme Court, you know, they don't like to get mixed up in politics.
I don't think the lower courts care that much.
It's hard to say. I think if you bring it up, they don't want to get mixed up in politics, and so sometimes you have to, you know, strengthen your argument and everything. But the bottom line, though, is that if you bring it up and you bring it as a political issue, and it is, you know, it's like an offer to pay when you send them the Form 1020. It's an offer to pay,
Mm-hmm.
and they can't answer that. It's a political issue.
Yeah, it's all political. And when I first went to college, my very first class was philosophy, and the first statement from the professor was, "Everything in life is political. I want you to write an essay on that."
Really? Damn, that's interesting. And that was in philosophy, eh?
Right, and because he said he never met a rich philosopher, guess what I did?
You went into philosophy.
No, I quit.
Oh, you quit.
I
You-
quit philosophy.
You dropped the class,
I
eh?
dropped college.
Oh, is that right?
If I can't get rich as a philosopher, then I have no reason to study philosophy.
Well, that's true. That's true. You know, Patrick Byrne, he's got a PhD in philosophy, and he's a very wealthy guy.
I'm not saying I was 21 or so at the time. I'm not saying I would make the same decision today. At the
Yeah.
time,
Right.
based upon his, I got an A, by the way, in my political
Philosophy in your
in
philosophy
the paper.
class?
Everything in life is political.
Is that right?
Which is making your point.
Right.
It's all political.
It is. It is. Politics. You know, when I've got an associate's degree, and I was actually working towards a bachelor's degree, and I took these classes from Embry-Brittle Aeronautical University, and one of them I took was there was one for financial accounting. There was another one for, what was that other one? There was one that talked about politics inside a company. And there's lots of politics. Everything's political. It is. And politics inside a company, you know, like certain positions are more political, like the director of human resources. That's a really political position. And so it's about politics. So just for the people on YouTube, the my YouTube channel is now monetized, and so if anybody wants a question answered, they need to send me a super chat, and then I'll answer their question. And so for what that's worth. But anyway, so let's keep going here. Well, actually, I need to refill my tea, so I think I'll do that first of all. And my camera's not working for some reason, so I gotta do some work on that tonight. So I might as well just shut this camera down. I'm recording it online anyways with my software. So anyways, it goes back to history. So in 1861, the Southern states walked out of Congress. Congress failed to have a quorum. 15th of April, 1861, under executive authority, Lincoln, a bar member, ordered Congress to reconvene. They couldn't conduct business, and so he had to order them to reconvene at 12 Stat 1258, which was executive order number 1, by the way. In 1871, Congress created a municipal corporation at 16 Stat 419. Civil law, Roman civil law are convertible phrases, meaning the same system of jurisprudence, that rule of action which every particular nation, commonwealth, or city has established peculiarly for itself, more properly called municipal law. So, it's a municipal corporation, it's Roman law. They're bringing Roman law into America. This is the basis of my challenge, actually. I'm saying that they're bringing the Vatican, which is a religious organization, and so Congress Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, and they've done that with this 1871 corporation, because the reason is that there's a common law of Europe, there's a common law of England, there's a common law of France, there's a common law of Germany. There's a common law of Russia. I don't know if you know that or not.
North Korea.
I don't know about North Korea.
Just asking,
But
how far is it going?
I have no idea. But I can tell you that in the U.S. Code, if you look in the historical stuff in the U.S. Code, there's a U.S. District Court for the District of China, or was at one point. That's true. So that tells me that common law is there too. I'll bet it is. You know, you just don't know. That takes some research to try and find that stuff out. But so common law is all over the place, and the communists use common law because you're free to do stuff. So you got in a contract. You know what I mean? They like to assault you with their contracts. So, but the bottom line is, though, is that municipal law is from the Vatican, and that's nothing related to common law. It's Roman law, and that's about slavery. It's what the Vatican does, is enslave people.
So in the original colonies / states, after the Constitution was agreed upon, what did common law versus municipal law look like? When was I under, as a free citizen, when was I under municipal law? Was it only when I agreed to it?
Well, no, they assaulted people with it. The Declaration of Independence is full of examples of that stuff.
I said after the Constitution. We won our freedom. The king signed the peace treaty.
There was no Roman law here, except that, there was no, the Bank Act. The Bank Act, the Congress passed the Bank Act like in 1875 or something like that. It was in the 1870s when Congress passed the Bank Act. Before that, there was banks, but there was no laws regulating them. Remember? There was a national bank, but there was no laws regulating banks. And prior to the Bank Act that was passed by Congress, I think it was like 1870, 1865 or 1871 or something like that when they passed the first Bank Act.
That was, I think previously they had small town family banks,
right,
operating as banks and bankers.
Right.
The reason I think they brought in the code and the Bank Acts was because the foreign bankers, the cartel families from Europe, were now trying to take control of America, in essence. I mean, they've been trying to do that from the very beginning.
Right.
But the First United Bank of America they tried to bring that in like a federal bank,
That national bank,
the
yeah,
First National.
right,
And it wasn't. It was the banking cartel.
right,
Was it Jackson, Andrew Jackson, that fought them? So
Right.
he did it the first and the second,
right,
but he kept them out. But I think he was the one that then, or his Congress, buddies, whatever, brought in the Bank Act to control these foreign cartel banks.
well,
To come in
Jackson
and try
was
and take control of the money supply.
Jackson was in the presidency in like 1840s or 1830s or something like that. That's when Jackson
Well,
was president.
he may well have been, because he was the one that was fighting.
Yeah, he fought the bankers for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Matter of fact, he said, "I'll rout you out," and it was just all sorts of fraud and stuff that he caught them doing, and he wanted to get rid of them.
Yeah.
And they got rid of the national bank, the second national bank. I think it was like in the 1830s or something like that. And but it wasn't until the 1860s, I think. When was the first National Bank Act? Let's find out.
Partial answer to your question as well, Nelson.
Interesting.
I think once the people had thrown King George,
Yeah, 1863.
oh, there you go, just around the time of the Civil War.
Right, right,
Um,
exactly.
coincidental?
There's a bunch of
or
shit
not?
that happened during the Civil War.
Yeah.
Anyways, what were you saying?
I was just going to say, when King George and his minions got thrown out of America, and the Declaration of Independence became, like the first of the organic laws of America. It's my contention that at that point, every single man in America at that time took the place of the sovereign. They all elevated themselves
Right,
immediately
I agree.
to sovereigns without subjects.
Right,
Which
exactly.
is why the old rule says that in this country you can do whatever the hell you want, wherever you want, whenever you want, as long as you don't infringe on the rights of anybody else.
Right,
Because that's another sovereign. You can't infringe on the rights of another sovereign. So the government comes along. How do we control sovereigns that are over us? They give us the power. They cede power to the government. That's written into the organic laws too.
Who is they?
The people. The people cede the power. The sovereign people cede the power to the government.
Not true. I don't think you're right. I'm not living under those rules. What we do
Well,
is,
that's with the consent of the government. I'm not saying this is the difference. If you want to live as a free inhabitant, as far as I'm concerned, you can do. And you should do in this country as a free sovereign, a free inhabitant with all of the powers. But if you want to live under the auspices of government, then you cede some of your power to them along with everybody else. And that's where all these laws come from. But government cannot rule over sovereigns. So what they've done is they've tricked the sovereigns into becoming these 14th Amendment citizens under government rule.
okay, I agree with all that, but let's go back and talk about prior. Let's say 1805. I'm living on the land of Pennsylvania. I was born on the land after 1776, even after the Constitution. I'm now of age, 21 years of age.
Mm-hmm.
Can I be a capital C citizen in order to help elect people to control out of control states and out of control people, insurrectionists, without surrendering any of my sovereignty as one of the people.
Okay. I
You
see
follow my
the
point?
question.
Okay. So that's where I'm at today. I don't mind being a citizen of Pennsylvania with a capital C, of Pennsylvania state, because that is my nationality. That's what's on the passport that DC issues. Now we the people created DC, and I need that passport to keep the gold fringe flag maniacs away from me today.
Mm-hmm.
But if I go onto a territory like Washington, D.C. or Puerto Rico, I don't lose my authority as a sovereign. Now I'm visiting them and I'm not going to break their laws. If I do, then I'm subject to them. That's why when I travel, but I rent a car, I'm like, all right, if I get a ticket, I'm going to choose to pay it as a sovereign. I violated their law when I agreed to rent the car using the license.
Right. You pretty well have to. Matter of fact, what they'll do,
I think that's the honorable thing to do.
what they'll do is they'll just charge it on your credit card.
And there's nothing I can say.
And there's
about
nothing you can say about
exactly.
it.
So I agree, and I'll have to pay the tolls, and which I've done, and
yeah.
I've made it. I'm like, okay, you got me.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
I swallow it. But if I were not renting a vehicle,
Right.
in commerce,
Right.
I'd tell them to get lost.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
And I don't disagree with that.
so I'm just explaining my current understanding as far as political and how, I agree with your comment that the equal rights, and I agree, you as a man who was born elsewhere, not on these lands of the United States of America, within the United States, I agree. Charlie, before he died, he said he felt that if anybody understood the Declaration of Independence and Articles of Confederation as a free inhabitant in the Northwest Ordinance and the Constitution, there's nothing they could do to that man.
Right.
If that man knew how to stand on the organic laws, then yes, there's nothing the government could do. So the way you phrased it before, I'm like, no, I can't accept that. I forget exactly what it was, but those are my reasons why.
Yeah, I was talking at that point about how the government basically control, and you're ceding some of your sovereignty to the government, in essence. But that's where the consent of the governed part comes into
exactly
the creation.
Not only the creation, but the consent of the government when someone who thinks he has authority approaches me with a gold fringe flag in today's world,
Right.
on his shoulder, or some taxing authority.
Mm-hmm.
And that goes to your point, Glenn. If we're not in commerce, then they have no authority.
Yep.
But and they're just claiming using the paper dollars is agreeing to the interstate commerce power of the Congress.
Well, and that's why I always put in, if you notice, when I tell them I take donations, I prefer gold or silver coin, but as an extremely less desirable alternative, I can accept the fake money, the military script, the IOUs. So I put that in there on purpose, because then now it's not a privilege.
Yeah. Well, that's why I do the similar thing with the checks or services exchange for.
Right. You endorse
credit.
it with a qualified endorsement.
Yeah. So it's credit on account. I'm showing that I've not got paid yet.
Yeah, right.
So.
Right.
And I'm forced into using the non-redeemable Federal Reserve notes.
Fake money.
Mm-hmm. Which is why, as an alternative, we can choose as men, as sovereigns, to worldwide, is to be in crypto, for example.
That's why I like crypto, quite frankly. Mm-hmm. There's people that are afraid of it, but I think it's going to bite them in the backside. It's not a central bank digital currency. It's not it's not anything they can regulate. That's the reason I like it. I mean, I've mined Bitcoin, I've mined Litecoin, I've mined Doji, the Doji coins. I've mined those things too.
Mhm.
The government doesn't have any control over those things, and so that's why I like them.
Now, I have a suspicion that the whole BRICS thing, that the good guys are behind it from America.
Could be.
They're letting all those countries get everything all set, and then once they show that the Fed doesn't have the goods to trump them, then America will say, under abolishing the Fed, what's our options? As a possibility.
I think that what'll happen, 107 actually talks a little bit about it. He suggests that the Fed is involved internationally, and actually they are. You know, like for example, Deutsche Bank. Did you know Deutsche Bank is a member of the Federal Reserve?
Yes.
So there's overseas banks that are members of the Federal Reserve. So you can't expect them to go away. But what we can do is people just walk away from their fake money and quit using it, and use gold or silver coin or cryptos. You know,
Exchange their fake money for gold and silver coin or crypto.
yeah, that's right.
Which is what we do. And those of you who are listening, try not to miss next week's cryptocurrency weekend.
There you go. We got a cryptocurrency weekend next weekend, everybody, and we'll be talking about Bitcoin and other types of how would you put it? Opportunities.
Mediums
Electronic money.
Yeah.
Mediums of exchange.
Yeah. Well, I've got a Coinbase debit card, but I heard about another type of debit card that you can get that you have to charge it up. So you just charge it up with a cryptocurrency, and then it's a Visa, but I'm not sure that you have to do the KYC with something like that. I'm curious to find out. So, anyways, what is called proclaiming martial law is no law at all, but merely for the sake of public safety in circumstances of great emergency, setting aside all law and acting under military power. So that's what happens when they have martial law. That's what happened in the Civil War, is we had everything was brought under martial law, and martial law is part of Roman law. So it talks about trusts and all that stuff. It's all part of Roman law. Civilian. And notice there's 3 definitions of civilian here. A person not serving in the military, but this is all Roman law. Civilian is a Roman law word.
Civil.
Right. Civil.
Versus common.
That's right. A scholar in civil or Roman law. That's the 3rd definition.
Wow.
Which means it's Roman law. Governments descend to the level of mere private corporation, take on the characteristics of a mere private citizen, where private corporate commercial paper and securities is concerned. That's all Roman law. Private corporate commercial paper is negotiable instruments. Think about it. And negotiable instrument law is a subset of Roman law. Purposes of suits, such corporations and individuals are regarded as entities entirely separate from government. When they go into that, they lose their sovereignty. When we go into that, we lose our sovereignty, but it's only for that commercial transaction. So you have to have, what's the Bible say? The Bible says that you have to have honest weights and measures. And so if you want common law, you have to have honest weights and measures.
Mm.
And that's why the courts want a filing fee or a fine. That's you're submitting to their fake law, their Roman law, when you do that. 2 national governments exist, one to be maintained under the Constitution with all its restrictions, the other to be maintained by Congress outside and independently of that instrument. And That's Downs versus Bidwell, 1901. The 1871 corporation is operating under the Commerce Clause, and it's maintained by Congress outside and independently of that instrument.
And that's why they can control the people, because people are all operating under that.
They can. But again, it comes down to because of ignorance, right? And what's the
Yeah.
root word of Mark Passio? Remember, I talked about Mark Passio earlier. He's a former Satanist priest, and he said that what's the root word of ignorance? The root word of ignorance is ignore.
Mm-hmm.
So you're ignoring the truth. You can't ignore it. Supreme Court ruled on a case that Lincoln failed to like, which I think was ex parte Milligan, but I'm not positive. And it said that military tribunals cannot try civilians when civil courts are available. Milligan was a guy that was living in Ohio, and he was saying bad things about Lincoln's government, and Lincoln didn't like it. So the military arrested his butt, and they put him on trial. I think they took him to Louisiana and put him on trial in Louisiana or something like that. And so what happened is they sentenced him to death by hanging. He was going to get hung, and he filed a handwritten habeas corpus with the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court, that was their ruling. So they basically said, you can't be doing that. So Lincoln sent troops to the Supreme Court, which resulted in Rule 45, and all process of this court issues in the name of the President of the United States.
Wasn't Lincoln killed in 1865? How do we know he failed to like it?
I don't know. The court ruled, I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know when was Lincoln killed. Hey, let's do a search on that.
I think it was 1865. I agree. Wow. Why I'm sharing.
Assassination of April 14th, 1865. Isn't that interesting?
Right.
April 14th.
The day before.
The day before April 15th, which is when his first executive order is issued. That's tax day. Isn't that interesting? And that's AC 61, so that's 4 years. So he had 4 years after his first executive order to live. Isn't that interesting? I'll be back in a minute. Oh, so somebody in the bathroom?
No, I just closed it so that the smell doesn't come in when it lets the fresh air kind of take care of the issue. What's that? Here's my last text for a bit. Thing. Here. All right, go ahead.
Financial compounding calculator.
Go ahead.
I put in like 2 to start adding 1,001 at 70% interest monthly. And at the end of the year.
I know, and our friend, I mean, it gets absurd, and you hear about people doing that all
Well,
the
that's a
time.
good idea.
So
Having that window open.
we'll
Get a
close
little
the door.
breeze.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Sorry?
I mean, if there's a smell, just close the door on your way out.
Well, there's no smell.
And just
Well, my shit don't stink. Everybody knows that. Besides, I didn't take a shit.
Yeah, and that's just at 70, but when I calculate the other one, it's
it is insane, and I don't mind insanity. The whole Federal Reserve System is insanity, so I'm willing to accept a little insanity if it turns into lots of digits.
it's never been my focus in life, but sometimes you wonder.
Well, it's not my focus, but if I'm spending time stressing or working at something that isn't my preferred profession, helping people or whatever, then it's a problem. I need to get free from, so I'm free to do things that I'm interested in.
Yeah.
Whether it is helping people or travel or whatever, as opposed to being bound up.
Okay, so the case was decided in 1866. So maybe it wasn't that case, you know, if Lincoln didn't like it, or maybe his successor didn't like the case. I don't know. I thought it might have been that case. It was my wag. You know what a wag is, don't you? You don't know what a wag is? A wild ass guess.
But wasn't Grant the next president?
Yeah, I think he was.
Because he was, I think, the one responsible for the 1871 Constitution.
No, Johnson was the president.
Johnson?
Andrew Johnson.
Okay, yeah, he was the vice president.
He was. Grant came after because Grant was busy fighting the war, or it had just ended.
Right.
So Andrew Johnson became president, and then he won one term by one vote. His next term, he won by one vote.
Really? Damn, talk about a close election.
And it had to do with the whole issue of the Reconstruction Acts that had been proposed.
The president vetoed that act, and Congress overrode the veto.
Right, and then he won his next 4 years by one vote, was my understanding.
Interesting. So, anyways, no Article 3 courts. This is Balzac versus People of Puerto Rico. United States District Court is not a true United States court established under the Constitution, Article 3, to administer the judicial power of the United States, but was created by virtue of the sovereign congressional faculty granted under Article 4, Section 3 of making all needful rules and regulations respecting the territory belonging to the United States.
And that's why they call them justices and not judges.
Justice is supposed to be, that word is supposed to be common law.
And so maybe we need, when you go to the, quote, Supreme Court, address it to a justice.
Yeah. I was thinking about putting a flag on top of my paperwork.
I can't wait to see. Yeah.
So this is all going to the minor estate, which is a quasi-contract. It's all political. Everything is politics.
Mm-hmm.
Just looking at the comments on the chat, and there's nothing. Well, there's comments, but there's nothing in particular. If anybody has a question, send me a super chat, and I'll be glad to answer it. So an individual means a natural person. A minor means an individual under the age of 18 years. The term minor is also used to refer to an individual who's attained the age of 18 years but has not yet taken control of the securities contained in his or her minor account.
Now, I agree with you that they're attacking us through the minor account, but I disagree with, in my case, they're attacking me as a decedent, the name of the decedent on the estate.
Sure, I understand.
But if I'm 22, it's not the decedent of the estate. Then it is actually.
They're presuming. It's all presumption.
Well, that's what the
And it's
60-day
Roman
Act
law.
was all about. You had to. They gave you 7 years.
It's Roman law.
Yeah, they gave you 7 years, and if you didn't put your hand up, and say, "Hey, I'm here, I'm
Right.
alive,"
And when I
and
went
declared
into
you
the
dead.
Wells Fargo branch to open a account in order to receive the fake money from Social Security, which I agreed. It said, "Are you a U.S. citizen?" with a capital C, and I said, "Yes, I am." I had no problem being a capital United States citizen because I'm speaking for that dead entity as the breath. Point being is, I said, "Tell me what kind of accounts I can open that are," and they said, "There's 3 different kinds." Not me personally, but that they offer. One is if you're under 18, one is 18 to 24, and the other is over 25, which goes exactly along with the Cesta KV Act situation of presumed dead at 18 years of age because I didn't report in and accept my securities, and then one when I'm 25 when they legally declare me dead because I didn't report in. And so I just found it interesting that it was exactly that.
Okay, so moving on. The minor estate is found in the Code of Federal Regulations, which means that it's other property of the United States under Article 4, Section 3, Clause 2. And a court means a court of law with jurisdiction over the parties and the subject matter. And so, again, you need to attack the subject matter, the denials of due process of law. When they deny due process of law, they lose subject matter jurisdiction. Entity means any owner of a Treasury Direct account that's not an individual. Entity is a sole proprietorship, partnership, corporation, limited liability company, a professional limited liability company, trust, the estate of a decedent, or the estate of a living person, such as an incompetent or a minor. So that puts you under the Commerce Clause, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 3, which means under the Commerce Clause is a plenary jurisdiction. And
Right. So the states agreed that our free citizens, our citizens of their states will be subject to this Congress under certain rules, being bound by the Constitution, the chains of the Constitution.
well, it's the government supposed to be bound with the chains of the Constitution, not the people.
No, the people, right? The people agreed that they would bind the states. They surrendered some of the sovereignty of the state. They never surrendered any sovereignty of the people, correct?
Yeah, right.
And there were indentured.
The 10th Amendment says that all rights which are not hereby all powers which are not hereby granted to the state or federal government, or no, to the federal government, are hereby reserved to the states or to the people respectively.
Yes, and so they thought long and hard.
They laid awake at night over every word.
I wish it's a shame that none of our, or few of our ancestors in the last couple of generations really knew that they were being hoodwinked.
Yeah.
They were trying to be honest, honorable people, honoring the government that they couldn't imagine would become so corrupt.
Well, I can ask or have asked my parents and grandparents when they were alive. They couldn't even conceive that the government was bad. Oh, the government's there to protect us. They're not there to do us harm. That's literally what the words that came out of their damn mouths.
We understand. It was incomprehensible.
Yeah.
So that goes back to the first organic law, which is the Declaration of Independence, when it talks about all of the grievances and how.
See, the difference is though a bunch of pirates took over the government, the Vatican. They're Satanists, they're liars, they're thieves, they're murderers.
We have to drive them out of the temple.
That's right. You're right. The government is supposed to be there to protect us.
I opened
yeah,
up.
and that I understand and that I agree with. I mean, the government, certainly in America, only has some very limited powers,
Right.
but what it's become is
Yeah.
anything but limited.
Yeah, no
I mean,
shit.
it's dug its fingers into everything.
Yeah.
But it's still, if you look at it, it still reverts back to those powers. Exactly what you just said.
I think that that's why Trump is in there and he's like shaking things up big time. That's why I play those 107 videos, because it lets people know that, you know, there's a lot of stuff that's happening that's not readily apparent.
Mm-hmm.
And so it lets people know that there's things happening that they might not be noticing, but that are very positive. You know what I mean? That's why I like 107. There's going to be another video I'm going to show tomorrow that's going to talk more about some other stuff that's going on.
Nice.
So, standing. My opinion has long been that the mayor and aldermen of a city corporation or the president directors of a bank or the president directors of a railroad company or other similar corporations are the true parties that sue and are sued as trustees and representatives of the constantly changing stockholders. A corporation, therefore, being not a natural person but a mere creature of the mind, invisible and intangible, cannot be a citizen of a state or of the United States and cannot fall within the terms and power of the above-mentioned article, and can therefore neither plead nor be impleaded in the courts of the United States. Now, this is 1852, prior to the 14th Amendment, but the important thing to understand is you cannot mix. So corporations can sue corporations and men can sue men, but you can't mix them. And so that's what they do, is when you sue a corporation, then they presume that you're the minor estate. That's what they do. That's why they spell the name in all block capital letters. That's why the state of Texas assaults you. They can only assault the minor estate. That's all they can do. And you have to understand that. And you understand that it's a Roman law, and there's ways of defeating it, and it's trust law. You know, I know that this guy, this friend of mine in Canada, he would say, I'm a beneficiary of a trust with that name, and I hereby appoint you to be trustee, and I demand that you settle this matter immediately. Now, are you going to perform your fiduciary duty, or do I have to sue you for breach of trust? That guy that talked about the trusts, he said the easiest thing to do is go after him for a breach of trust, and that's the easiest thing on earth. And you just even threaten it, and they run and hide because they can easily be removed for breach of trust. And so, you know, so that's a powerful weapon, actually. So, but you still have to know how to deal with it, how to. That's why what I would do, and then it would be an experiment. I'm not sure what to do. I mean, if they're dragging you in there, but I think the one thing that one of the first thing is when you show up, when you appear in their court, that's what gives them jurisdiction.
Yes, and one of the guys I listen to calls it a banker's acceptance.
Well, and so, you know, I've heard of the banker's acceptance. The in my opinion, if you say right up front that I'm a beneficiary of a trust with that name, when they call the name, I'm a beneficiary of a trust with that name, then all of a sudden everything's going to change, because you're not the trustee. The trustee is the one who's liable, and they can do stuff to.
Right.
So then you accuse the prosecutor of being trustee or anybody else but you. You know what I mean?
I do. Unfortunately, I've not had to address it, but because but the next time I will know, hopefully I'll remember that. It does pay to rehearse.
Right.
In fact, Glenn, if you have an opportunity at some point to get a transcript of your statements, like you've rehearsed it so many times, that would be good for us to have available to rehearse.
Well, we need to talk to that guy. You know, the thing is that, and I was telling, who was I telling that to? I mean, you watch the video. He's a small guy. He's balding. He's got a bit of a squeaky voice, and it basically strikes me when you hear him talk. It just struck me as, if Satan had an appearance and had a voice, I mean, that's what he would sound like. You know what I mean? And so I'm not sure that I want to talk to the guy, but it might be good to pick his brain about some things. And I know there's people that have issues, and it'll be interesting, the people contact him, pick their brains about what he told them to do and that kind of stuff. You know what I mean?
Now, is it possible that when Glenn is filing paperwork in the court with the gold fringe flag, that Glenn, is admitting to being a corporation, regardless of how he claims in his paperwork? I'm just
Well,
asking the question.
I would say not. Let me just show this guy here.
Can age spots be removed? Absolutely. Age spots are not actually caused by aging per se.
See, look at him. This is him right here.
In the act, they charge 6%, and instead of getting paid in federal,
I don't know. It's like the way he talks and the way he looks like Satan would look like to me. You know what I mean? I mean, it's like, anyways, I don't. He talks about trust law and how it's all trust law, and I agree. But I try not to go there, and because of that, I don't know how to deal with it there. But if you go there, like you hear these people that say that go in there, like you hear the story. Like there's a guy that I heard about that would go in with a copy of the birth certificate, okay, just a copy, and he would actually go privately to the lawyer, to the prosecutor, and he would say, he'd hand him the copy, and he'd say, "This is not for identification. This is for evidence of my interest, and I hereby release my interest to you to settle this matter." And the prosecutor say, "Oh, thank you," and it gets settled.
Right. Now, I've heard that there should be a addendum, a caveat, that we have to limit the amount that we're agreeing to settle for, because otherwise it gives them a blank check and they rob the estate and they're getting way more than they're even.
You can turn them into the IRS if you want, and because that would be what I would do.
Right,
because
they've issued a bond just to demand that you go in there to begin with.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, right.
So they're basically committing securities fraud is the crime.
Yeah.
And there is a way to deal with that. I've not gotten to that point yet but we're all working on it, and that's why we have these private information shares to share victories and approaches.
Right. So, anyways, yeah. So the said Supreme Court shall divide the district into 10 sub-districts. This is where the 10 federal regions come in, and prescribe the place in each sub-district where the justice thereof shall have his office for the transaction of business, and may change the boundaries of such districts and the locations of the offices of the justices therein from time to time, as the volume and convenience of the business may require. And that's Code of Law for the District of Columbia, 31 Stat 1190. All corporations are in a zip code. All government offices are in a zip code. The United States Postal Service is a corporation domiciled in the District of Columbia in L'Enfant Square, which is French. Every corporation, for all its purposes, is an agent of Her Majesty, the bitch, or the son of a bitch. I guess it's the son of a bitch now, right? And that's Section 3, Government Corporation Operation Act of Canada. And then Section 2, definitions. In this act, owned means subject to the regulations. And that's the Canadian Ownership and Control Determination Act. The Congress shall have power. That's the same thing in the U.S. as it is in Canada. And Article 4, Section 3, Clause 2 says the Congress shall have power to dispose of and make all needful rules and regulations respecting the territory. Actually, the stuff that's is left out: territory or other property.
Capital T and P. Just for
Other property belonging to the United States.
pretty sure rules and regulations are both capitalized.
So the point being is that if you're subject to the regulations, you're property. You're owned. You're a slave. So should a suit be brought against any party or corporation in any district in which he or it does not reside or hold business? And a plea to the jurisdiction on this account be filed by said defendant, the party or corporation interposing such plea shall disclose under oath the district in which he or it should have been sued. And that's Code of Law for the District of Columbia, 31 Stat 1190 to 91. And if you go to 31 Stat 1280, which is in the Code of Law for it, that's like about 300 pages, that act. There's a 1280 is a huge section called corporations. And so then all of it falls under the Commerce Clause to regulate commerce with foreign nations among the several states and the Indian tribes, which is Article 1, Section 8, Clause 3. And when you incorporate into the government, you incorporate into the government. That's what incorporation means. Everything subject to regulations is government property. A corporation is a franchise, a special privilege from the government. A privilege. Remember that 1873 corporation. Everyone and everything not privileged is sovereign. Everyone and everything not privileged. And it comes down to the evidence that you give against yourself. So you don't give evidence against yourself. And so if I manage a limited liability company, okay, well, I don't tell them that. I don't volunteer that information. And they don't ask, I don't tell. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
So you have to, it's don't ask, don't tell, number one. There's a lot of things. That's when I talk to people about trusts, the first thing I do is I make them sign a non-disclosure agreement. Because if there's any time the government finds out anything about us, it's because we tell them. And we have to learn to just keep our mouth shut and not say things. And disclose as little as possible.
Right, and we as honest men and women want to be open and honest.
Right.
They're criminals.
And they're just nothing
So
but a
we're
bunch of
not
thieves and
obliged,
pirates.
not obliged.
They're thieves and pirates, and they're going to take advantage of you. Remember, they say everything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. So don't give evidence against yourself. If they ask you a question, I'm just an employee. Huh?
I don't answer questions.
There you go. That's a good answer.
It really is the simplest.
Yeah.
It really is. It's so hard to just stick to those guns.
Yeah.
I don't answer questions.
Right.
Well, they get real pissy when you
They
don't.
do. Sure. How dare you? Don't you see this badge and the
Yeah.
gun and my flag and my emergency lights?
Right.
Oh, so you coercing me?
Yeah.
You using threats?
Under the Fifth Amendment, I don't have to give evidence against myself. Are you violating my rights under the color of law?
Am I free to go?
Am I
being
free to go?
detained? Am I under arrest?
Yeah,
For what?
that's right. We therefore decline to overrule the opinion of Chief Justice Marshall. We hold that the District of Columbia is not a state. I wonder if I already talked about that in here. Let's go plenary. This is 29. $33. Okay, I don't. This must have been in the other one that we talked about it. In other words, cases between citizens of the district and those of the states are not included in the catalog of controversies over which Congress could give jurisdiction to the federal courts by virtue of Article 3. In other words, Congress has exclusive legislative jurisdiction over citizens of Washington District of Columbia, and through their plenary power nationally, that's dictatorship, covers those citizens even when one of the several states, as though the district expands for the purpose of regulating its citizens wherever they go throughout the states of the Union. You know, originally we used to think it was territorialism, but it's not. It's District of Columbia. They're expanding the District of Columbia in violation of Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. And where's the bona fide contract? That's National Mutual Insurance Company, the District of Columbia versus Tidewater Transfer Company, 1948, U.S. Supreme Court. Status. State, standing, condition, situation, compare estate. Okay, so remember they're even talking about an estate. Corporation has no status as a citizen outside the jurisdiction where it was created. A corporation's a citizen's a corporation. If they're assaulting you with their U.S. citizen slave, then you're in the District of Columbia. The law of status, the category of law dealing with personal or non-proprietary rights, whether in rem or in personam. It is one of three departments into which civil law is divided. And so status, civil law, remember the civil law, Roman civil law are convertible phrases, and they're talking about the same system of jurisprudence, more properly called municipal law. Yes.
Is any time we use a Latin word, we're basically surrendering to the civil law?
Might be.
Might be.
Might be.
Might be. Show me some common law where we use civil law.
They don't.
So,
And even Roman law, you could be submitting to Roman law.
right. So I noticed that oftentimes I'll hear, some of the things you are indicating. You use the word in rem or in personam.
Yeah. Although I use the words like the maxim of law that says that which is created can never be greater than that which created it. And there's another maxim of law that says no civil law can violate right of blood.
Right. Well, and I agree. And maybe if I use it in the English and I'm not using the Latin,
Yeah.
it might be a way I have to take the Latin aspect out, because now I'm just talking in common English.
Right. I think that they're laying in wait for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And again, there's plenty of easier prey out there.
Right.
They have it so good. It's like a buffet. You're like, I'm going to leave that.
Right.
So if we become something that's not too appealing,
right,
they won't try to feast.
Well, and then what they do also is they call you a terrorist, sovereign citizen, a terrorist. And they've done that. There's a huge amount of stuff going like that. And that's why I actually have this video that I uploaded recently. Oh, whoops. I uploaded a couple short videos, some real short ones.
Ever stop me and ask that question? Are you a sovereign citizen?
Right.
Today, though, we say yes, don't we, Glenn? At least I don't.
Two enemies of the people. I uploaded two videos. One's less than a minute. The other one, this one here is 1 minute and 36 seconds, and this one's 3 minutes and 26 seconds. And this one, sovereign citizens, I tried to keep them less than a minute. I didn't. First of all, this one here is the first one I did. And there's a thing called shorts. Here's on YouTube. Here's one that I uploaded. It's 38 seconds. And they put it in this category of shorts. But so I needed to keep it less than a minute. And the first one, I didn't know that I needed to keep it less than a minute. And then the second one, I just barely went over, but it went over, so it's not a short.
So have you, Carl, looked at the law lowercase sovereign citizens that had to do with 1940? Did you see that yet?
Yeah, I'm aware of it.
Or you just rather stay away from it?
Because I know that they're programmed, so I just say no. I'm not.
Would that be a bad thing? Maybe I love the one guy who says, as king, ASKING, we ask questions as king. We're asking questions. So I ask questions of the cops, and it goes to your friend Glenn, who asks questions. What's the guy's name who always asks questions in court, glossarizing everything? Kerry.
Oh, Kerry Zolman.
He does nothing but ask questions.
Right. He
never
ties them up
makes-
in the knots.
Ties them up in knots by asking questions. So when we have cops pull us over or whatever, we should ask questions as king.
Yep.
Ask king. Asking.
I've gotten a little bit better about asking questions. Don't answer when they ask me things.
Exactly.
I return it and
Right.
ask a question that's kind of sometimes
leading.
gives them the answer.
Mhm.
Not the one they're looking for, but it does give them an answer.
So status is Roman law, and that's why I don't go there. If I had to, I suppose I'd have to contact this guy. But so far, I've been able to make it so they don't want to talk to me, and that's really the solution, in my opinion. As used in this section, the term United States business means United States citizen, right? So a United States citizen's a corporation. And that's found at 102 Stat 1344, Public Law 100-418, August 23rd, 1988. And it's not territorialism. We used to think it was territorialism, but it's actually not. They're bringing the District of Columbia outside 10 Mile Square in violation of Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17, to exercise exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever over such district not exceeding 10 Mile Square, as made by session of particular states and the acceptance of Congress, become the seat of government of the United States, and to exercise a like authority over all places purchased by the consent of the legislature of the state, in which the same shall be for the erection of forts, magazines, arsenals, dockyards, and other needful buildings. And it goes on. And that's Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17.
Okay, I have a bit of a comment there as well. Two things, I think, is their total control. So Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17 is one, territory, and Article 4, Section 3, Clause 2. Those are the two areas I think that Congress or the government is their power extending
Right.
out to everybody.
Right.
I'm not sure if they're more than that.
No, that's it. That's it.
That's what I thought in my mind.
Right.
But the one thing there that just came to mind is it mentions the states. Obviously, it's the agreement of the states and the cessation of these lands by agreement.
Right. And what I have deduced from my 3 experiences, one being locked up and telling the cop to get out of my jail cell, which he did, because I said I'm on the land of New Jersey, not the state of New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is I checked the legislature to see if they ceded the local land for the post office here, and they did. There's actually an act by the legislature.
Wow. That's interesting.
Yep. I'm like, okay, they do everything right except tell us.
Yeah.
That's
Well-
one of the original post offices. Then.
No, it was done in 1930 some or 40 some. It's not one of the originals.
Oh, okay.
Which takes you to my third comment, is it's all about the definition of the state. Okay, so if
And that's where I was going.
the 1871 corporate constitution of the United States of America, which sounds good. It's not, it's evil. But they trick us by using the words what we love, United States of America. Who wouldn't love that? So they ceded that land, and even though they're a de facto legislature, they're still breathing people, and therefore I claim that the original Constitution is mine to claim when I'm on that land. The case could be made that was fraudulently conveyed, but I don't go that far. Point being is the legislature exists, their rules exist until such time as I put up one of my organic law blockages.
I think the organic laws are very powerful.
Becoming more, yeah, the more we realize that,
Right.
which is why a man like you, Carl, as a free inhabitant, those organic laws is where your power and authority.
Yeah, and that's where I speak from,
Right.
usually.
Right.
But the state part always gets me because, I mean, you said it earlier in your other part of the presentation there, Glenn. The state itself, is it the true state? And is it operating that way?
I claim it's both. It's both.
Well, this is the bit that I'm not sure about, because the government itself, the federal government, is using 1817 and 432 to extend their power over everything, and they've municipalized all of the states because
Right. I
they
agree.
weren't operating under the original states.
Agreed.
So because the original states are not in operation now,
They are in operation.
they're not being, the office is not being,
I disagree. I say it is. And that's why I have the authority. I don't consent, and you as a public official, I don't care what government you're claiming you're working for, what state government you're working for, what county government you claim you're working for, what municipal government you claim your authority comes from. I, as the sovereignty of the people, trump it, and therefore you must come to heel. With that, unless you wish to commit a 10-year felony, and that's why I carry the passport. That's exactly why, because that it says whoever shall violate my safe conduct.
Yeah.
So therefore, I don't care if this was true even back before 1871. If the state officer was going to violate, he wasn't doing it under the United States. He was under color of law of the state. So it's just a blend of quasi-governmental actions. So that's why we have to be diligent. So the word, I claim it's both, and that's why when I brought up in my municipal city council that the flag was essentially unconstitutional with the gold fringe United States flag.
Mm-hmm.
It took over a year, but I think now the chief of police recognized that when he did his due diligence, and he said, I need to have that flag up there to protect me, because the last chief of police who thought he was acting under the gold fringe, under color of law, he lost his position. And I think that's actually now helping him be protected, and even the legislature, even though they're acting under corporate law, 1871 / state of New Jersey.
Yeah, that's the bit that I'm not sure of, because if they're operating under the corporate law, then they're not operating as the true state.
They're operating as the true state at the beginning, the de jure root at all times. If we're breathing, men and women, now we surrender some of that authority, but when we signed like a corporation didn't sign their signature.
No.
That was the man.
Yeah.
The de facto state is claiming the 1871, but their oath is under the original because they signed an oath to the Constitution of the United States. But any citizen of the United States, small c, 14th Amendment, is putting themselves under the 1871, and that gives the legislature of the city council and the chief of police and the judges. So both are true at any time. It all depends on what sovereign they are addressing.
So they would be the ones that would have to comprehend it.
It's up to me.
Well, you and them.
Right.
Because that's the problem. We go into their jurisdictions, into their offices, and they seem to think they're God.
And that's why I was arrested at a city council meeting and there was no real warrant. And I warned the officers, if you proceed, Article 6, Clause 1, you're committing a constitutional violation. Please call the chief of police before you do this. They did not. 23 hours later, I was released, and the local municipal court issued an additional legal notice to the Maine under their authority as a de facto state for $2,500, and I took that, went to the next council meeting, and gave it to the president of council, and I said, here, this is yours. He gave it to the solicitor who came over to me at the end of the meeting and said, I will need this, otherwise I won't know when to show up for court. I said, hold on one moment, let me get my camera out and start recording. She threw it down on the pew, ran away, and I picked it up. I was dressed in my prison suit, walked back up to the president of council, handed it to him, and that's where we stand today. There's a warrant for that name for $2,500, and the current chief of police is potentially liable for a felony if he goes ahead and executes the warrant. And I see it back. You know how the old days the sheriff was the highest law of the county?
Right.
Because of the weirdness of municipal law, I had to bring the current chief of police to the point where he's the sheriff of the city.
Right.
And he's going to be responsible as the man. So that's where I'm at as of right now as far as, so is it territorialism or is it municipal law?
I don't think it's territorialism. I think it's District of Columbia.
Agreed.
So that's not territorialism.
I agree. So, but territorialism is okay under the Constitution.
Oh, it is. We have the Northwest Ordinance. It's got all the rights that you'd ever want.
Right. And the word territory there is small t, and in the Constitution of the United States, it never occurs with a small t. It's always capital. It's capital T.
Mm.
The territory and other property belonging to the United States.
Right.
So I think the founding fathers knew exactly who they were dealing with, slippery eels, and they had to.
It's the Roman cult.
They knew they couldn't eliminate the Roman cult. They had to
Bind them down with the chains of the Constitution.
I can't wait. I hope Thursday, 6 p.m., I'm back in city council after 3 months or so of being away. We're going to find out. I may be thrown in jail again. But if they let me pass, at the end of the meeting, they're going to get an earful for 5 minutes. And Jefferson is going to be quoted at least once. And I'm planning on saying to them, everyone remember the Alex Trebek, who was the star of Jeopardy.
Right.
I'm going to pose the answer. what is criminals and government? Then I'm going to go ding, 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 ding. And I'm going to answer. I'm going to ring in and I'm going to say,
Two enemies of the people.
what are two enemies of the people? You're correct. The two enemies of the people. Rather than actually just quote it, make them think a little.
Right.
Just for fun. What are
They won't have a clue.
what are criminals in government? That's the so what. Well, however, I'm going to. It's those are the two.
You got to set it up like Jeopardy.
Exactly. So let's see. How would it be? The answer is. So the answer is what we're given in the question.
The answer is, and then the question is, ding, 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 ding,
Right. So
ding.
the answer is
Criminals in government.
criminals in government, and the question is,
Ding, ding, ding,
what are the
ding,
two
ding.
enemies of the people?
Yeah.
The two, rather than just tell them what the two enemies of the people are. I want to
Exactly.
talk about criminals in government. So that's my plan. Just for fun. Because unless we bring them under subjection, they are public servants.
Right.
They're bound by their oath.
Yep.
And their oath is still. And how does this do? This is political, correct, Glenn? Your state, your video here.
Yeah, it's
How does
political.
politics enter into statutes at large 1-1, the oath?
Everything's political. I mean, when you, if you're incompetent, you're insane. That's all political. So if you don't know what you're talking about, they send you to a mental institution. Think about it. That's what the communists do to their political enemies, is they put you in a mental institution.
Yes, I know and I was the political enemy of the church.
Right,
And they asked the state to make me a political enemy, which they did.
right.
And the political constitution of 1947 for the state of New Jersey grants a judge the power to put a resident of the state without trial in an institution to determine their competency.
They're communists.
No question about it. Communist, socialist.
Yeah. But there's a new sheriff in town.
And we now train other sheriffs. We're part of the posse comitatus.
There you go. So, to exercise exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever over such district not exceeding 10 miles square as made by session of particular states and the acceptance of Congress become the seat of government of the United States, and to exercise like authority over all places purchased by the consent of the legislature of the state in which the same shall be for the erection of forts, magazines, arsenals, dockyards, and other needful buildings.
How do you, Glenn, define territorialism? Because I'm thinking it might be territorial. You're proving territorialism.
Nope.
No?
That's not territory. That's District of Columbia and federal enclaves. That's all that is. That's not the territories. The territories are governed by the Articles of Confederation, the Northwest Ordinance.
So you're saying the authority of territorialism, we as men are not within the territorialism.
Not unless we're in the D.C. or a federal enclave.
Or don't know any better and are citizens of the United States.
Yeah. Wow.
Or we're voters. Don't we have to agree to being a U.S. citizen with a small c? I know in New Jersey that's the case.
Yeah.
I resigned from voting about 5 or 6 years.
I haven't voted in a long time.
But they presume.
I know.
And when I was in the clink,
This is all Roman law.
they had a second address for me as a jury member, potential jury member.
Oh, yeah.
I went to my P.O. box. My sister sent it to me when I was either in jail or the institution. And I wrote a letter to the secretary who handles the elections. You know what they did with the P.O. box? Closed it. They put a big X and wouldn't let. And my sister opened it up, or it was locked, or whatever. She opened it up. Anyway, that is what was giving them jurisdiction, me having a P.O. box. I don't like having a P.O. box.
So how did you get the P.O. box?
Originally, I had it before I went in. I didn't realize. And when I declined the voter jury summons as this local address,
Mm-hmm.
years later, their system popped up and said, "Oh, this guy with his name in the P.O. box, he's still on our jury roll. So let's send him." Maybe they were doing it to try to get jurisdiction.
Well, actually, if you sit on a jury and educate the jury, that might be useful.
It would be fun.
Jury notification.
Yeah.
But now, knowing everything I know now, I would love to be on a jury. That their case is doomed. One time we were in Texas, and I'm walking down the hall of the district court, which is Superior Court in New Jersey, and I'm yelling to all of the potential jurors who are sued. I said, "All it takes is one man to stand up. You can, whatever." I forget exactly what I said,
Right.
but I was going down hoping one of them would have ears to hear.
Yeah. It's a pretty tall order nowadays. I mean, they dumb them down with chemtrails, fluoride in the water. I mean, it just never ends.
So plenary dictatorship equals dictatorship.
Plenary means it's a dictatorship. Plenary jurisdiction is full and absolute power over the subject matter and the parties in the case. Plenary is full, complete, entire, Black's ninth. Plenary is full, complete in the courts of admiralty and the English ecclesiastical courts. That's where this is all coming from. It's the Vatican, the Roman cult.
I feel that I'm getting a revelation that I have plenary power. I, Nelson, have plenary power.
Could, if in your court.
And it is my court. Unless they can show they have a higher court.
Well, good luck. Let me know how it goes.
I will. And that could be why the habeas corpus works when it's handwritten by the man that's in the clink.
Well, so we've got to get one that works.
Have we ever tried it
We've tried several.
that the man has personally filled out?
Yeah, Darren fills them out, and then I sign them as next friend.
You're not hearing what I'm saying. The speaker for someone else is not plenary. I am plenary. You're plenary. He's plenary.
Yeah, getting people to do it when they're in their hotel is a little bit more difficult.
Agreed. And they prevent it from.
They do everything they can to prevent it because they won't even let you have paper or pencil.
That's not true.
If you pay for it, you can buy
That's
it.
not. I've
Yeah,
never
maybe
heard
in New Jersey, but elsewhere there's no paper and pencil. I can tell you for sure.
Well, that's a federal crime.
Plenary is a plenary power or plenary authority is complete and absolute power to take action on a particular issue with no limitations. It's derived from the Latin word plenus. That's Wikipedia, which is questionable authority, but it's saying the same thing as the Legal Information Institute, which is Cornell Law School. Plenary power, complete power over a particular area with no limitation. This term is often used to describe the commerce power of Congress. Under the Commerce Clause, Congress is granted full power over interstate commerce. The court has found that states are not able to pass laws affecting interstate commerce without the permission of Congress. Article 6, Clause 2, this Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made or which shall be made under the authority of the United States shall be the supreme law of the land, and the judges in every state shall be bound thereby, anything in the constitutional laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding. So the U.S. Constitution trumps it. But you have to bring it up. You have to stand your ground.
So any state, Carl, means any state, whichever state, whether it's de facto, de jure.
Right? Yep. My new book, Trump, A True American Patriot or Not, is now available. Mike Blackwell asked me to write the book. It took me about 6 weeks to write the book because I just took a lawsuit and manipulated it and turned it into the book. But Mike had to babysit me for 6 months to get it ready to publish as a book, and so I put him on the book. But I wrote the book. He hired a company to publish it, to help us publish it, and they did the back here. This is found on the back of the book, and I think it kind of nails it. And so I'm just going to read a part of it here. In Trump, a true American patriot or not, Glenn Fern and Mike Blackwell reveal the depths of corruption, deceit, and manipulation identifying our political system for hundreds of years, regardless of political affiliation. Remember, it's politics, right? Read the hard evidence that exposes how our elected officials sold Americans into slavery. Understand the founding fathers' true intent when they formed a republican form of government. Discover the influence of the satanic Roman cult in our politicians and political system. Does Donald Trump want to transfer power back to we the people? In Trump, you will see the great battle that is upon us. And that's so true. So you can order the book on Amazon or my website. If you order my website, it'll come autographed or signed, whichever way you want to call it. It's really an autograph. You want to know the origins of the deep state, who's behind it? You want to know why it's called a Trump administration? Do you want to know what an administration is? Do you want to know how Trump came to be president? There's actually a YouTube video with Jerome Corsi. Jerome Corsi is a guy that lives in the Northeast. He's got a PhD in political science from Harvard. He's written a bunch of books. He's got a website and a YouTube channel. Anyways, there's a YouTube channel where he says that in 2015, 5 generals came to see him and they said they were going to overthrow Obama. And he said, you can do that if you want, but you might want to go talk to Donald Trump first. And 3 months later, he gets a phone call. They decided not to overthrow Obama because Donald Trump had agreed to run for president. So they say, according to 107, that there's about 200 generals that are behind Donald Trump running. And so they're doing their part to orchestrate things from behind the scenes. So he was invited to run. Do you want to know who owns Congress? Congress is owned. That's why Pelosi used to get up and say, we can't read this bill until after we pass it. Do you want to know why they're called law enforcement officers? Right there is the Law of War manual, and it's full of stuff about law enforcement officers because law enforcement officers are there to enforce the martial law. Do you want to know how you have become a slave? So think about it. If you're forced to work for the government for nothing, then you're a slave. And isn't that what taxes is? They're forcing you to work for them for nothing. Do you want to know what the root cause of the War of Independence was? It's the same thing that's going on today. Do you want to know why every president goes to visit the Pope on their first international trip? Have you noticed that? It's in the book. So I already told you about Mike Blackwell and Jerome Corsi, 95% provable facts. I use court cases, law dictionary definitions, international treaties, all sorts of stuff like that to prove everything that I say in there, although there is a little bit of opinion. And one of my opinions is that all of these billionaires get approached by the New World Order crowd and get told, you're going to go along with our program or you're going to turn up dead. And I think that Howard Hughes was approached, and so was Donald Trump. And actually, David Wilcock has a video where he says that after World War II, Howard Hughes got blackballed and he couldn't get into defense contracts. And everybody knows Howard Hughes is a big industrialist, and he built airplanes for the war effort and all sorts of stuff. Anyways, so he got blackballed, and according to David Wilcock, he got some young ladies to go and sleep with the military-industrial complex types to find out how come he couldn't get any defense contracts. And that's when they found out that they're going to do what's talked about in the Georgia Guidestones. They want to kill off 90% of the population of the planet and basically create a global plantation. And so Howard Hughes had actually published a set of books, given instructions on what to do it, and Kennedy was actually implementing those instructions. Remember, he circulated $6 billion worth of U.S. Treasury notes. That's like telling the bankers, you're done here. And so they killed Kennedy, they killed his brother, they killed a bunch of other people, Martin Luther King, who knows, a bunch of other people. And so I think that, again, this is my opinion, can't prove anything. I think Howard Hughes was hiding out because he figured he was next. And so there's lots of stories about Howard Hughes in various areas. But so anyways, that covers all of that. In reality, they're not after me, they're after you. I'm just in the way. And thank you, Donald Trump, and he's right. So, Gold Reserve Act of 1934, 48 Stat 337, as used in this act, the term United States means government of the United States. The term currency of the United States, which, if you think about it, currency of the government of the United States means currency which is legal tender in the government of the United States, which includes United States notes and Federal Reserve notes. It also includes silver certificates, by the way, and Treasury notes. The action of Congress in the passage of the first Legal Tender Act was placed distinctly upon the ground of the existing imperative need of government, and the Legal Tender Clause was urged and adopted as a war measure. That's Juilliard versus Greenman, 1884, which is talking about martial law. No state shall coin money, emit bills of credit, make anything but gold or silver coin, and tender in the payment of debts. That's Article 1, Section 10, Clause 1. And so there's no lawful money in general circulation, okay? That's got to be in general circulation for it to be. And so right now, you can get, matter of fact, I have lawful money. I always carry it with me because otherwise I'm a pauper.
Have you ever had to use that?
Not really. No, they never even ask. But this says $1 on it. This is a Silver Eagle coin. It says $1 on the bottom right here. And it's 90%. It's 100% silver. It's not 90%.
Because my brother told me that originally all silver coins were 90%. They weren't pure. I'm just telling you what the guy that he buys.
Well, it says 1 troy ounce pure, fine silver. It says right on it. Fine silver, which is, according to the Coinage Act of 1792, 400 grains of fine silver.
Glenn, I think what you're going to find, this is correct, but it doesn't say 0.999. It is true. It's 1 ounce, but it weighs more than an ounce.
Well, maybe it does. That's a good question. I'll have to check it out.
Right.
I have a postal scale at home, and so as soon as I get home, I'll pull that postal scale out.
But this says 1995, so I would say it may be just 0.999. But I don't know that this is. I mean, it's.
I guess we'll see.
Yeah.
They say that they put the nickel. Actually, they put nickel in it because it's nickel or copper. It's copper. They put copper in it because it hardens it, makes it more durable, because that way it doesn't wear out as fast. Because the coins will wear out.
Right.
Gold is quite soft, and that's the reason I can tell you for sure that U.S. gold coins are not pure gold. They're not 24 karat gold. They actually are, I think, 22 karat gold or something like that. So they put alloys in it to make the gold harder, and it wears better.
But it had to have 300 and some or whatever.
It's got to have, that's right. So it actually weighs more than an ounce.
Right.
A gold 1 ounce coin, it's a $50 gold piece, weighs more than an ounce.
Right.
But it actually has an ounce of gold in there.
Exactly.
But there's other, and that's well known that gold coins, U.S. gold coins minted by the mint, are way more than, but they have, the gold is in there. It's not 24 karat gold.
Right. And I believe you may find that prior to 1860 or whatever, the 1 ounce silver coin weighed more than an ounce for the same reason. They added the alloy. According to
that's possible. I don't know. I know that junk silver, which is because the silver dollars, the old silver dollars, I don't think that they were an ounce. They were smaller. The old silver dollars, I don't think they were an ounce. They were just called a dollar.
whatever the number of grains based on when the coin was minted, that a dollar was defined is how it turned out. But it was more than that weight-wise. It was 90% silver according to.
See, the old silver dollars are smaller than the Silver Eagle. I've had silver dollars, and they're smaller than the Silver Eagle. You know, Bonnie You know Bonnie, don't you? Bonnie Straight?
Yeah.
One time I was riding with her. I was in the back seat of her car, and and uh, and I was telling her about I should get compensation for my labor, and so she gave me a silver dollar. Okay, and I started looking at that silver dollar, and I thought, oh, an 1800 silver dollar. So I got on my phone and I got on eBay and I started searching for 1800 silver dollars and see what they're worth on eBay. And I said, "Hey Bonnie," I said, "you know this silver dollar that you gave me as payment for my labor. If you buy one on eBay, they're $110,000." So she says to me, she says, "Give me that silver dollar back." I had to be honest with her. You know what I mean? I could have just kept it. It was an 1800 silver dollar. She gave it to me. Could have just kept it. Maybe I should have. I don't know. But anyways,
Now, can Congress emit bills of credit?
actually, no. It says that no state shall do that. I would say, see. That's why they had to get the Federal Reserve to do it. I think
Yeah. That's why
because
the
it's a
Federal
private
Reserve-
company. You see what I'm saying? But technically, even when a private company does, it's a franchise from the federal government. I think that it's still Congress. Is they're delegating it. I think it's unconstitutional. I think the Federal Reserve is unconstitutional.
Well,
I think it is too. I think the Treasury has
and
should have all
we
the power.
need to, unfortunately, it's a technical issue. When we say unconstitutional, we know what we mean. But it's not unconstitutional if you put in brackets under the 1871 Constitution of the
Yeah.
United States of America.
I don't think so. I think that I can't. I don't think you can make those kinds of arguments because the 1871 corporation's run by Congress. Said right in that Downs versus Bidwell case.
Yeah, but it was talking about a case that was in the District of Columbia or Puerto Rico.
It was that was Puerto Rico. You're right, but I think that I don't think I think that you're grabbing at straws there.
I think that the whole, what was that original case that got the Supreme Court to be able to rule on a case, the judicial, what did they call it? The judicial review. It was John Adams, I think, or there was a guy, John Adams gave a,
Oh, yeah, Marbury versus Madison.
see, I think that was the trap. It didn't matter what, it did not apply to states at all. Judicial review. They were reviewing something that happened in the District of Columbia. And yes, they did have the ability.
So they expanded that power to review District of Columbia
That's what just
to
happened.
basically everywhere.
Right. And we,
Maybe.
those scoundrel,
interesting.
Those scoundrel lawyers, Glenn, said, we're going to take Marbury versus Madison and start saying, well, that's why we, the Supreme Court, have the right to rule on all these other cases.
Yeah, you never know. Yeah, you never know. Actually, that was a bone of contention. It was Jefferson, I think, that was a major bone of contention with Jefferson because he said they were outside the scope of their responsibility. I'll be back in a second.
And that was right at the very beginning too, 1803.
Exactly. And they were trying to say, okay, how can we get power back over our colonies in the bar? And of course, as we know, that the word deviling in Scotland means what?
I don't know.
You don't know what that means?
No.
You don't know what it means? Deviling? I'm surprised that you have never heard this.
Well, I keep telling Gabby, between me and my dad, we know everything.
Where's he?
Well, he knows that one.
I see.
I just got that.
they don't even talk about not even hiding it.
Yeah, sounds about right.
But before you became a lawyer, you would have to be employed as a deviler, someone who's deviling.
Yeah, actually, that's in Scotland.
That's what we were just
We
discussing.
were
And I
just
was,
discussing that.
I was shocked.
actually, I've never
I was
heard that.
shocked that you never heard that.
No. Now, the second definition,
Right.
bedeviled is another word.
Yeah, they have. It's deviling. Yeah, there's even a book called Deviling. I think it's called. It's a book on for lawyers.
Yep.
So governments descend to the level of a mere private corporation, take on the characteristics of a mere private citizen, where private corporate commercial paper and securities is concerned. For purposes of suit, such corporations and individuals are regarded as entities entirely separate from government. And that's Clearfield Trust Company versus United States, 1942. And then there's another case that's similar. Governments lose their immunity and descend to the level of private corporations when involved in commercial activity, enforcing negotiable instruments, as in fines, penalties, assessments, bails, taxes. The remedy lies in the hands of the state and its municipality seeking a remedy. So they
Is that why
lose their
just
immunity.
use numbers?
Huh?
Is that why they just use numbers on their paperwork? They don't tend to use
Right,
the dollar sign.
right, they don't.
to
You're right.
indicate they're not-
Yeah,
they're
I
not
don't think that
demanding
gets them
money.
off the hook, though.
No, it probably wouldn't. But
Congress, claiming its martial law power to declare war, suppress insurrections, and repel invasions, imposed martial law in the United States and never discontinued it. The result was an extension of military and municipal jurisdiction of Congress. But where's the evidence of this? Look at the 13th Amendment, the Civil Rights Act, the legal tender laws, the 14th Amendment, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's the non-ratification of the 14th Amendment by Judge H. Ellett to the Utah Supreme Court in the case Diet versus Turner. So, again, that's Roman law, and that's why it's an act of religion, and that's why it's unconstitutional. So we'll see what happens. I think that I can, well, I don't expect to be able to overturn all of that stuff. Even if I can get the DC corporation dissolved, then that'll be like major victory.
So you're saying it's unconstitutional because of the First Amendment?
Yeah.
Because it's Vatican?
Because, yeah, exactly.
Because all corporations are Vatican?
No. Just municipal corporation.
What other kind is there?
There's corporations. There's common law corporations. There's lots of different kinds of corporations.
Okay.
And so you go into those old law books and they talk about corporations there. And so, but the Vatican, the municipal corporation, is the problem.
Right. So I always thought municipal meant city, meaning just my city, Philadelphia, whatever, but it really doesn't. It means municipal means civil law, Roman law.
It's Roman law, yeah.
Right. See, that was a revelation to me.
It's Roman law.
Because I just thought cities were like smaller, like it was just they were contained.
Right.
But that was a education.
Yeah.
And I think the gold fringe flag is not territorial jurisdiction under it's the municipal aspect of the DC code.
Right. Roman law. It's been infringed.
Yep. It's good.
Okay, so it's 5 o'clock. I think that we didn't have lunch, so I think it's time to cash it in for today.
Good job today. Thank
And
you,
so
Glenn.
we'll continue from here. This is slide number 46 tomorrow about it being political. And then I've got one about the Roman law. And then I've got one about demurs. And so that should easily take up all day tomorrow. Matter of fact, I'm hoping that we probably won't get the demur one. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. I just have them ready. And then next week is the cryptocurrencies and cryptocurrency weekend. And we'll talk about Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. I've mined Bitcoin. I've mined a bunch of different kinds of cryptocurrencies. I think that's the people's money. I think that it started out as a NSA 107 said it was done by the what do they call it? Not the NSA. It was the
CIA or
no. Well, it was national. It was the
oh, you talking about DARPA?
yeah, Defense Advanced Research Program Projects Agency. It was done by them. It was email even was done by them. Facebook was done by them. I mean, Google. It's all done. It's all coming from them. But it's taken off like big time, and they're out. It's out of their control now, and so they're it's like something that whose time has come, you know. And so we'll talk about that next weekend. So where do we want to go for dinner? Should we go to Yanni's or do we want to go somewhere else?
I don't know. But Scott, did you have any question? Do you have one question or two before we go? Anything that you kind of burning desire to know? Anything?
No, nothing that is on top of my head right now, but we can always something does talk over dinner.
Okay. Oh, you're coming to dinner tonight?
Yeah.
So the if you want contact with that guy that does the trusts, first of all, I would suggest you watch that video that I uploaded with him, okay, and listen to what he's got to say. He's a pretty interesting fellow, and I can email you. Send me an email, and I'll email you his contact information. There's also another guy on there that's a forensic accountant, and he can basically prove that the bank loan was a fraud, and he can go into he knows where to go in the treasury stuff to pull up the transactions and where the money went and all of that stuff, eh? And so he's a pretty smart guy. I like the guy that's the forensic accountant. The guy that this other guy, I think he kind of looks like Satan, in my opinion. It looks and talks like Satan. This is him right here. And so doesn't that look like what Satan would look like? Kind of a scrawny guy, kind of a mealy kind of. Listen to his voice.
Reserve notes, they wrote into the act that they get paid in gold certificates, which was like a piece of paper stating that they had a claim on as much gold. So they didn't even want their own money.
I'm gonna go get my wallet.
Anyways, I would suggest you watch that video because the guy's pretty interesting. He deals with trust law, okay, and really, I can tell you for sure that all that stuff is trust law. I try not to go in there, but once you're in there, like in your case, you're dealing with child support. It's clearly trust law, and you can resolve it using trust law once you understand how it works and what to do. You know, my attitude is that I would never get in there and allow them jurisdiction in the first place. But once they got their hooks in you, you're kind of fucked. You know what I mean? And so that's a way of dealing with it that can work. Myself, I would never allow it in the first place. But yeah. So the trust law, he talks about trust law. And this all trust law for sure. All of these courts, it's all the Vatican, and that's why I say it's satanic, because there's court cases that talk about it where equity. Okay, they trust law works under the law of equity. Okay, and so equity in the Bible. Let's take it from the Bible. Okay, and when you have common law, equity has to follow common law, which then it's good. There's nothing wrong with equity when it's following common law. But what happens is when you have martial law, which is what we're under right now, he'll even tell you we're under martial law. The judge will even tell you, I can do anything I want here, okay? So then equity can do literally anything it wants. That's what makes it satanic, because they're Satanists. And I've actually, we've confronted judges in court and told him this is a satanic religious ceremony. He said, yes, you're right, it is. Because, and so they know it's all satanic. And so so you have to understand that, but he knows how to deal with it in those courts, and so I'm referring people to him that they got their hooks in you, and once they got them in you, then it's really hard. You got to get it resolved and get it closed before you can ever be really free. And once you do get it resolved and closed, then you'll be free again, and they won't have anything on you. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But you got to get that put to bed.
Right. So just first step is resigning from voting would be the first step.
I don't know. Yeah, talk to him. I would say I don't know at this point.
Good question.
You can. There's the way you have to look at it is like there's a bunch of fish hooks in you. You know what I mean? Each of the contracts, there's contracts that they have you in, and you just have to pull one out at a time. And then after a while, you'll notice, hey, I'm free because all the fish hooks are gone.
And the one cop, when they arrested me one time in front of the church or removed me on video during their conversation, he talked about hooking me.
Right.
Meaning put those cuffs on me.
Right. Right.
Take me away. Those scoundrels.
Right.
And I still say the Treaty of Washington of 1871 is a fishing contract. It's maritime. And that's a treaty that still has power. Treaty of Washington. Anybody cares about
I wouldn't be surprised. I think all of that stuff is food for thought. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on. I think that Trump is getting ready to sandbag the Bank of England. I think they're going to try and bankrupt the Bank of England with getting them into a short squeeze. And you listen to 107 and you listen to this other stuff that's going on, and I think that's what they're planning on doing. You know, how it all plays out and when it happens and everything is yet to be seen.
I'm going to take the remaining tea here.
Go ahead, take a gallon.
I have it.
I better get some of that money I have in the banks in England into crypto.
I wouldn't. Yeah, definitely. I would not have any money in the bank. I have a little bit of money in there, just what I need. Like I think right now I got a Bank of America account. I think there's like $16 in it, and so I keep it in Coinbase. Actually, I keep it in private wallets. Is where I keep it, and off, you know, somewhere else. I've got an open transaction to buy a bunch of Ripple, and I'm expecting that there's going to be a crash. I don't know when, but when it does crash, it'll spike down to Ripple will spike down to 20 cents. And so I've got some open transactions waiting. It's called program trading. I've got open transactions waiting to execute, and I'll buy about 77,000 Ripple at about 20 cents, 21 cents, 22 cents, and so that'll be good. I'm looking forward to that. And so then, you know, because Ripple right now is at $2. If it just goes to $2, then 77,000 Ripple at $2 will be, you know, $150,000.
Nothing to sneeze at.
Yeah. And then with exceedingly, you know, it's a matter of you got to have lots of irons in the fire, you know. And so I think that right now, it was like YouTube just monetized my channel. I think that is what it is. Is there's a time when I've always known that it was going to happen. That would be coming at me from every direction, and so, you know, I have no control over it. Right now, for the longest time, I didn't have two nickels to rub together, and then it's going to come at me, and I'll have more money, and I know what to do with, basically. And so, you know, we'll see what happens. That's all I can say, you know.
Don't forget your live stream.
Yeah, you're right. Good idea. All right. Thanks, everybody on YouTube, for watching. We're going to call it a day. And we'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place, same channel. We'll see you guys tomorrow at 10 o'clock in the morning, Eastern Time. We're in Ocean City, New Jersey, and we'll be starting again 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, Eastern Time, and continuing on this event for the Sunday. That's tomorrow. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Take care. Bye.
So where can I find that video?
It's on my YouTube channel.